shotguns for the modern survivalist. That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life. Saddle up for another episode where we talk about guns, gunfighting, ballistics, tactics, use of force, the right way, with Almighty God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am blessed to serve you as host today, military and law enforcement veteran, urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps after my combat tours. Worked some regular assignments in law enforcement, some more specialized assignments in law enforcement. Been a private contractor, a gun for hire for the federal government. I have won, by God's grace, more shooting competitions than I can remember. State rifle and pistol champion, a few times over, a few different ways and places and disciplines. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. I should mention also blessed to be a lifelong hunter, professional big game hunter and guide. Hunted all over this beautiful country. That's going to tie into today's episode on the shotgun. Let's talk about the shotgun. I think the least loved of the tactical children. I think because they're relatively, there has been some advancements which we'll probably talk about, but a basic shotgun is relatively unchanged for the past 100 years. It's still devastating and effective, but a lot of gun content you get is bought and paid for, basically drug dealers for guns, basically. Oh, look at this new cool thing, you gotta have it, FOMO, you're missing out. And you get less of that with the shotgun because it's good generally the way that it is. There are some improvements that can be made to it, but an old school pump 12 gauge is still a devastating weapon. So a bunch of people in an industry aren't making a bunch of money off of it. So it's less advantageous for people trying to push new products on you. They'd rather push on you some much less practical pistol caliber carbine or something like that because it's the new hot thing, and you're going to be John Wick with it. But the shotgun is a great gun. It's a great weapon. Just because other people aren't making as much money off of you with it doesn't make it less effective, less devastating. The shotgun is the most devastating up close, and by up close I mean 100 yards and in, small arm an average armed, well-regulated citizen can have. A 1 ounce slug at 1,600 feet a second is nasty. Nasty. A full payloaded double-aught buck. Do you even sling double-aught buck, bro? A full payload of double-aught buck is devastating. 9 pellets of double-aught hitting a chest cavity at one time. 27 pellets of number 4 buck, one of my preferred go-to loads. It is nasty, not to mention a 41 pellet magnum load. Nasty. It's a phenomenal load. I've got all kinds of guns. I'm blessed by God. I'm not a gun collector, but I have a good battery. I have a Scar 17. I'm blessed to have it. I ran that when I was the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters. Guess what's riding behind me in the truck right now as I'm in a very wild area in the West? A shotgun. Remington 870 with buckshot and slugs and some other various ammo in the back. That's what's riding behind me. Why? Because it's the most practical tool for the job. You'd kill anything in North America. And I can also put food on the table. And the shotgun excels at that. Let's talk about the duality of survival. I probably should do a whole episode on this. I've mentioned it before. I've briefly brushed on it, and I'm only going to briefly brush on it again here today, but the duality of survival. And I'm not saying these things are 50-50, but protecting and providing for yourself and those that you love and your neighbor. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. You have, I believe, the same responsibility. You may not, but I think as a man, you have, and as a Christian man, you have equal responsibility to protect the life of your neighbor as you do yourself. It is written, you shall not stand idly by while somebody takes the life of your neighbor. That's a sopping wet pansy that just stands by and lets his neighbor get killed when you can do something about it. So, that duality, putting food on the table, quite literally, and protection. The shotgun excels at that. It is the most flexible, not only the most devastating, but also the most flexible. that Scar 17 is it's a great defensive rifle. Not great for small game. I'm on high prairie, high desert, surrounded by beautiful rugged mountains right now. I've seen elk, deer, and antelope just in the short bit of time since I started driving. I'm heading out to the wilderness, very remote, millions of acres of wilderness area to spend some time in the wild. Go into a deserted place and rest a while. But I've seen deer, I've seen antelope, I've seen elk. Hopefully I'll see some bear and wolf on this trip. But probably more likely to be able to feed myself with grouse and quail and duck and all manner of other things. And you take a lot of that off the table. You're not just shooting it to kill it, right? I'm not a serial killer of animals. I'm shooting it to eat it. And, shooting a dove is one thing. Shooting a dove out of the air so that I can eat it, or shooting a dove off a branch so that I can eat it, or a quail to put food on the table, or grouse, that's another thing. So the shotgun excels at that. There is nothing that I would rather have, and if I'm heading out into the wilderness to survive, which is more feasible when you live out in the Wild West than anywhere east of the Mississippi, but either way, if you're looking at the most flexible tool to put food on the table, it's the shotgun. Anything from a mourning dove to a grizzly bear can be put down with a 12-gauge shotgun. It is the most versatile tool just by switching ammo. No other weapon is that flexible. And I'm not saying it's the only weapon. I'm not even saying it's always the best weapon, but it's often overlooked. And I think because, again, a lot of gun industry can't pimp it out to you and can't, dig into your wallet and get more cool stuff because it's good in its pretty much basic form. It's a devastating tool. When you talk about the duality of survival, protection, to the vast majority of defensive cases inside 100 yards and maybe 150, 200 yards if you know your weapon and you have not just a bead-sighted shotgun, but a properly sighted shotgun, and you don't just go buy whatever random slugs are on the Walmart shelf, but you actually test and test what's actually good and sight in your shotgun like you would sight in a rifle, you'd be pleasantly surprised, I think, a lot of times at how accurate and how good a shotgun can be. So we're talking 150, 200-yard weapon, which is, let's be honest, the vast majority of defensive situations. The vast, vast, vast majority. And I don't have numbers to put a percentage point on that, but it's a lot. And absolutely devastating. I've mentioned this before, but case in point, I work some more specialized assignments in law enforcement. I've kicked down a lot of doors, guys. I've been blessed to get through a lot of sticky situations as a professional gunfighter. Oftentimes, even with a vast array of armory of literal full auto submachine guns and full auto, CAR 15s, M16s, things like that I could have taken, I often would take the shotgun with buckshot and slugs because I wanted the tool that was best to get me through that hostile environment, through that building with people trying to kill me and out the other side still breathing. I didn't care what looked cool on Instagram or what was memey or whatever. And I would often choose a shotgun because at those kind of ranges, at urban warfare type ranges, it is the best tool for the job for many situations. Not all. There's some times when I'd grab a full auto CAR 15. Right? There's some times when I would grab something else. But a lot of times I would grab that 12 gauge with buckshot and slugs because it was the best tool for the job. Double taps aren't a thing with double aught buck, right? Just, you don't need it. It's superfluous. And that was completely taking off the putting food on the table. That wasn't a primary concern when I was doing stuff as a cop, law enforcement type stuff. That wasn't a primary concern. I was worried about keeping breathing when people were trying to kill me. Buckshot and slugs. And that's only part of the shotgun's appeal. You talk about survival, putting food on the table. Again, doves, quail, duck, all manner of small game, which is a big chunk of what you can actually get, especially if you're Oscar Mike. If you're on the move in a survival situation, what are you doing if you shoot a deer? You're probably already loaded down to the max with the amount of stuff that you can carry. So you're going to shoot a deer and take a pound or two of it and leave the rest to rot? I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't do that in the most dire of situations, but that's not a good game plan for success. And look at what happened to the deer population east of the Mississippi, where a lot of you guys live in the people hive that is east of the Mississippi. Deer were almost extinct, or even declared extinct in some states, I believe, or believed to be extinct, after the Great Depression. There's a lot more people east of the Mississippi now than there was during the Great Depression. What do you reckon is going to happen to the deer population in a giant economic downturn, even a halfway collapse? You think you're going to be out there hunting deer for survival? I'd say no. You're probably not. There's a lot of other things that may be around to hunt, though. So the shotgun excels at that. Heck, you can even fish with a shotgun in a survival situation. Probably not legal where you are right now, but in a survival situation, if you know what you're doing, you can even do that. The shotgun opens a lot of doors, both figuratively and literally. Talk about flexibility. I can breach with a shotgun. I got a master key for most doors. Now, I can kick down most residential doors anyway without anything. If you think your locked door keeps you safe, think again. I've kicked down a lot of doors. Let's just put it that way. And most doors you can just kick down, deadbolt or not. You don't have to break the deadbolt. You just have to break the wood around the deadbolt. But even thicker, beefier doors, you got a shotgun, you usually got a master key. So, chew on that. You also have less lethal if you want it, which you could argue the validity of that, whether you want that or not, but at least it's an option. And another big reason I don't think the shotgun is as loved, why it's kind of the stepchild of the tactical world, is that it's not as fun to shoot. I'll be the first one to admit it. I don't like, sighting in a shotgun for slugs, putting 20, 25 rounds of slugs through a shotgun. It's not fun. It's not as fun as doing that with a PCC. Pew, 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 clinging steel. That's a lot of fun. But don't believe the lie that it's the same. Like you see a bunch of little holes in paper from your PCC and think it's equivalent of, putting a full payload of double-all buck into somebody. It's not equivalent. It's not as much fun to shoot, and maybe not as much fun to train with. But you gotta, we're talking about the shotgun for survival, not the shotgun for fun. If you want the shotgun for fun, go shoot sporting clays. It's a lot of fun. But are you in this to turn money into noise? Are you in this for actual legit survival reasons? If you look at it that way, the shotgun becomes quite a bit more appealing. And there's totally a time to go out and just have fun and shoot and plink. That's fine. But turning money into noise does not necessarily equate to more proficiency. Now, where do we go from here? Let's talk about some of the characteristics of a good survival shotgun. Now, to me, if we're talking about the duality, both it needs to have a reasonable rate of fire, which, to me, is a pump or a semi-auto. Single shots are great. Double barrels are great for hunting. And it'd be great if you had one or two adversaries, but you may not, right? Now, if you're the guy that's like, I don't want a shotgun for defensive reasons. My tactical buddies that, have the American flag patch t-shirts, they're going to laugh at me. So it's AR or bust for me. And you just want a shotgun for putting food on the table. Just get a single barrel. They're cheap. They're effective. They're very utilitarian. A redneck with good fieldcraft can put a lot of food on the table with a single shot shotgun. I grew up doing that as a boy. I grew up a poor boy in the South, literally putting food on the table for the family to eat with a shotgun. With a single shot shotgun at times, with a bolt action shotgun at times. So you can do it. I wouldn't want one for defense. I would much rather have a pump or semi-auto. And if you're talking about the duality of survival, then why not have the reasonable rate of fire? Here's the thing. Pump action shotguns, you can get them very affordably and very reliable as far as the mechanical mechanism of the machine goes. It's a simple, proven design. There are many. But the big one on the market today to look at, sadly, the Remington 870, the newer ones, their quality control is kind of gone by the wayside. I can't recommend a new 870. The king of the heap today is kind of your Mossberg 500 family. So your Maverick 88, if you're really on a budget, they're still great guns. Your Maverick 88, your Mossberg 500s, your Mossberg 590s, Though that whole family, they're great. Pick whatever flavor is delicious to you. Rocky Road, mint chocolate chip, if you're that kind. I'm not, but and plain vanilla, whatever. But they're good. They're a good family of shotguns. There are a lot of other really good shotguns. The older Remington 870s, the old Winchester 12 and 1300s. So, and there's a lot of Turkish knockoffs of various quality, and there are a lot of Chinese knockoffs of poor quality. So, do your due diligence on that. But a good pump action can be very affordable and very reliable. A good semi-auto in general, you can get a cheap semi-auto or you can get a reliable semi-auto. Pick one, in my opinion. Good semi-autos, the rulers of those are the Benelli M series and the Beretta 1301s and A3 and 400s. One is the Beretta is a gas system and the Benelli is an inertia system. Do you want the AR or the AK-47 system? The Benelli M being more of the AK-47, just great in adverse environments, runs without going to the bathroom where it eats, like a lot of the gas guns do. I've done whole episodes on that, so I don't want to dwell on that too much. But a pump or a semi-auto, again, if you want a good, reliable semi-auto, which has a lot of advantages, it's going to cost you some coin. So just keep that in mind. And there are some advantages to pumps. Even if you're talking about a good, expensive semi-auto, pumps will run a variety of ammo well. Whether the pump works or not depends on how good you are at running the pump, not at how powerful or less powerful the ammo is. As long as you can get the projectiles out of the barrel with a pump shotgun, it'll run. So there's something to be said for that. Semi-autos, no matter how good and reliable they are, there's a variance at which they will or will not run ammo. So the pump is generally less ammo finicky. Now all that, and that's just one aspect of a good survival shotgun. Reasonable rate of fire. I guess we touched on reliability too. Reasonable rate of fire and reliable. You could have an M4 clone made in China or wherever that's not reliable. That doesn't have a reasonable rate of fire. Doesn't meet the criteria. I don't care how tactical it looks. Have fun posing with it on Instagram. That's not what this show's about. What this show is about is realistic defense hunting, kit. What are some other characteristics for an all-around survival shotgun? Not a bird hunting shotgun, not strictly a home defense shotgun. I like sights. Plural, not a bead on the front. A bead on the front is fine for a bird shotgun. That's a shotgun that's meant to be pointed, not aimed. And if you're shooting birds out of the air, pointing is good. But if I'm tat-splaining to you, kind of like mansplaining for tactical stuff, forgive me. However, your head is basically the rear sight on a shotgun. You have to mount a shotgun a lot properly to have that line up and get good effective hits. It's more precise if you actually have a rear sight. Now I prefer, if we're talking irons, I prefer rifle type sights on a shotgun. Not a rifled barrel, but a smooth barrel with rifled sights. I like ghost rings too, they're okay, but I prefer just a rear open notch rifle sight like an old school Winchester Model 70 or Remington 700 or even AK-47 style rifle sight on a shotgun. It gives you the precision needed. They're rugged, they're reliable. You can aim them. You can also shoot stuff out of the air with them too. If you get good, you just kind of ignore the rear sight. But if you want the rear sight, it's there. Again, we're not talking about a sporting clay shotgun. We're talking about all-around shotgun. And hunting for survival is different than hunting for sport. A lot of the laws we have today realize that's hunting for sport. That's not how one would actually hunt if you were hunting for survival. Would you try and shoot a duck out of the air? Or would you wait for it to land and shoot it on the water where it's way easier to shoot? Right? Again, we're not talking about sporting. We're talking about eating or dying. So being able to aim a shotgun is important. If you're talking about inside the home defense, like I'm only getting a shotgun to protect my 20 square foot bedroom. Okay, that's fine. But if you want to take it outside the house, you might want to aim it. So bead sights are out for me for an all-around survival shotgun. Sorry. Vent ribs are slightly better because a vent rib, Anyway, a vent rib is better because you can kind of have that flat plane, and usually, hopefully, they have multiple beads, so you line up the beads. It's not as good as rifle sights or a ghost ring sight, but it's better than one bead on the front of a round barrel. Again, if you're talking about just hunting, just hunting small game or moving animals, that's fine. But that bead is a little bit better because you can use it as a flat plane. And if you lift up your head, which is a common mistake in shotgunning, not having the gun properly mounted, you should notice it more so than you would just a bead. So that's okay. But some kind of sighting system. Even if you just have a vent rib and you have like the clip-on front and rear fiber optic sights, as long as you actually dial in your shotgun and pattern your shotgun, which is important, and sight it in with slugs, which is important, those are pretty good too. So you can get by with a good vent rib shotgun. The one bead, they're okay for what they're for, but I don't consider them a good all-around survival shotgun. So some kind of sighting system. Red dots or some kind of prism sight, they're a force multiplier on a shotgun just like they're on a handgun. I got nothing wrong with them as long as you can take them off and throw them away when they stop working. As long as you can do that, rock and roll. I don't like to trust my life to things with batteries. They're okay for a force multiplier, but I want to be able to take them off and throw them away and have my weapon system be completely operable when that thing's done working. But optics on a shotgun, sure, nothing wrong with that. Fit is important for a shotgun, very important for a shotgun if you want to get rounds on target quickly in a modern fighting stance. This means that a lot of your older classic shotguns are going to have to be modified to fit with a modern shooting stance. Those are meant to be shot with like a boxer's bladed stance, which again is fine if you're shooting clays. Probably not what you want if you're fighting, wearing body armor, all that kind of stuff. Magpul stocks for a lot of the modern shotgun options are a good option if you want to look into that. I'm not saying they're the only game in town, but they do make them for a lot of common shotguns. But something with adjustable length of pull, and something, unless you're a really, really big dude, probably something with a shorter length of pull than 13 inches. So just keep that in mind. Fit is important. Let's talk about gauge. There's really the big one. The standard is 12 gauge. There's really only two that I would probably consider if we're talking about an all-around shotgun, not a specialty upland bird hunting shotgun, not a, just small game only hunting shotgun. But basically you got your 12 and your 20. We'll touch on 410 in a bit. But your 12 and your 20. Your 12 is the standard. I'll be honest, for most things, it's more powerful than you need. But economy of scale, it's usually the most available, most affordable ammo. So there's that. Also, the shotguns are usually more common. It is the standard. And I would say it should be the standard for you unless you have reasons otherwise. The 20 gauge, especially east of the Mississippi, is powerful enough to kill anything. A good buckshot load and a good slug load will kill anything east of the Mississippi. It's a good option. It's got some real advantages for survival in that the ammo in general is lighter and takes up less space, which obviously for survival reasons could be a big deal. So keep that in mind. The 20 gauge is a viable option. It's certainly powerful enough, but it's generally costs more for the ammo, and it's less available in the variety of options. If you're talking about just getting like 7.5 shot, it's probably pretty close. But if you're talking about the variety of different buckshot loads, different types of slug loads available readily, then we're not talking apples to apples. The 410 for a lot of things is powerful enough, and you can certainly hunt deer with a 410 with a proper slug, like a Bernanke slug, which I'm not getting into the difference right here, right now a lot. However, 410, the price difference between 12 gauge and 20 gauge a lot of times is marginal. The price difference in 410 is not. 410, although it's much smaller and less powerful, is quite a bit more expensive usually, and it's quite a bit less available. I've had a hard time even finding 410 in the last several years in quantity. So it really kind of takes it off the table for me. Now, if you're looking for a niche weapon in certain environments where you want the shotgun but you want to carry a lot more ammo, the 410 has that advantage. The ammunition is quite a bit smaller, lighter, handier. And if you're primarily talking about small game and protection from people, There's some decent defensive options in 410 actually. Some of the triple-aught buck loads, that's a pretty nasty thing to contend with. It's not the equal of a 12 gauge, but it's enough, I would say. My big issue with the 410 is that the ammo is not nearly as available and affordable. You're paying more for less. So sum up the gauges real quick. 12 gauge is your standard. Go with the 12 gauge unless you have a reason otherwise. 20 gauge is plenty powerful enough. You really don't give up a lot, in my opinion, on slug performance. It's not nearly as powerful, but it's still plenty powerful enough for most things. You don't give up a lot on bird hunting, bird shot, small game. You do give up a little bit on waterfowl type shot. Now, just not as big a payload, and since anyway, you give up a little bit there. And where you give up a lot is buckshot. There's plenty of good buckshot loads in 20 gauge, but nowhere near the amount as 12 gauge. And if you just think about how you stack spheres in a cylinder, when you get the smaller cylinder, it's harder to stack spheres in there efficiently. So there's a lot less options usually available in 20 gauge buckshot. Like try and find triple-aught buck in 20 gauge or double-aught buck in 20 gauge. You might find number 3 and number 4, which is still a good buckshot, but you're giving up a little bit of the versatility in the buckshot world there. So keep that in mind. Also, you go down in recoil sometimes, but a lot of times the 20 gauge is lighter, which is a benefit for survival if you're carrying it on foot. But also, if you think you're going for a 20 gauge for less recoil, you might want to test that shotgun to shotgun because you got to look at the power to weight ratio. Although the 20 gauge is going to have less power, not always, but in general, for a similar size shot like buckshot load versus buckshot load or birdshot load versus birdshot load, the weapon itself also is lighter. So you may actually get as much or more recoil with the 20 gauge. And I know that flies in the face of what you might think, but actually shoot them for yourself side by side. Shoot a little lightweight 20 gauge youth model versus a standard weight 870 12 gauge, and you might be surprised. Now 410 is lighter still, and in general, it's quite a bit smaller, even than 20. So you probably are going to get quite a bit less recoil with the 410. And you give up a lot as far as really for deer. I would prefer a Bernanke slug, which are not common, and shotgun slugs shed velocity fast. For 12 gauge and 20 gauge, not much of an issue because even at longer distances, they're going to have plenty of power. But I would really limit my range with a Bernanke slug on a deer size game. And that's pretty much the upper limit that I would look at is deer size game with a 410 slug. And they do have some triple-aught buck at real close range for deer that would be okay as well. But that's a quick rundown on the gauges. There are other gauges, but those really are the big ones. Now let's talk about chokes. Not to tact explain to you guys again, but chokes are basically a funnel at the end of a barrel. We're talking minor, like very small incremental changes, but you think of it like a funnel at the end of a barrel. And the big chokes are open, which is no constriction, or cylinder bore, improved cylinder, modified, full. There are a lot of in-betweens and extra chokes, but those are the big ones. And going from open to full, more constriction, generally will give you a tighter pattern downrange. Not always, not for all different ammo, but again, we're talking about generalities here. So with that in mind, that's one of the things that makes the shotgun so versatile, the ammo and the different chokes. Now, if you're talking about, inside your bedroom with your Rio double-aught buck and your bead-sighted shotgun chokes, the difference is academic. No real-world difference. We're talking about taking it outside the home and different shot types and hunting different things. So many modern shotguns today have interchangeable chokes, whether it's a wind choke or a rem choke or Benelli or Beretta. They basically do the same thing. They have screw-in chokes at the end of the barrel that allow you to get different patterns at range. Shotgun can be very complex that way, so do your due diligence. Don't just assume that whatever choke is that I recommend is best for you. If I had to pick a choke, I generally would pick improved cylinder. Generally, the Foster style American slugs recommend shooting out of improved cylinder for best results in general. Your shotgun may do better with a different choke than that. You got to test it, right? Don't take the lazy way out and just go. Anyway, you got to test it. But if I had to pick one choke, I would pick improved cylinder for the vast majority of things. I would consider, and modified is okay too. Modified would be like my next choice probably if I wasn't going with in-between chokes. However, I would not go with full. Full is more of a specialty choke for me. A turkey choke, a waterfowl choke. I would not go full for an all-around choke. That's more of a specialty gun, a specialty type shotgun, a full choke. And to me, you give up a lot more than you gain with a full choke. That's just me. But if I'm picking an all-around survival shotgun, I would pick a interchangeable choke if I could. And if I was picking a choke, I'd pick improved cylinder. Sometimes I'll even put a different screw-in choke with in the side saddle where I put extra shells. I'll put an extra choke there so I can switch it out in the field with whatever's on the shotgun. So you might consider that. Shotguns are a complex topic. If we break it real simple, oversimplifying this, 30,000 foot flyover, you got some real basic categories of shotgun ammunition. You got your slugs, which is one big projectile. You've got your buckshot, and you've got your birdshot. Now, birdshot's you can go all the way from like 9-shot, which is very small, to your T-shot, which is just a hair under buckshot. It's a lot of variety in there. And even buckshot, you're talking about the difference in number 4 buck and triple-aught buck. It's a huge difference there. So a lot of categories. But again, if you're talking about an all-around shotgun, you probably want more than just your double-aught buck. That's fine for a lot of things. I prefer number 4 buck for a lot of situations. But you want a variety of ammo. And not all birdshot's the same, right? Number 6 shot is a good thing for a lot of things, but sometimes I want 9s and sometimes I might want 4s. So it really just depends. That would get way too complex. This is already going to be a long episode, but look at what game is common in your area and what shot size is generally recommended for it. I would stay away from steel shot for survival unless that's just what you have a bunch of stockpiled. But steel shot was for the environmental movement because you can shoot a person with lead, that's fine, but you better not shoot some animals with lead, that's bad, without getting into all that politics and whether that's good or bad. That is what it is. But steel shot, size per size, is generally less effective in my opinion and many others, and it's less dense. That's just physics. So if you're stockpiling the ammo for survival, not for sporting purposes, I would stick with lead or something even like tungsten or heavy shot, bismuth. That has advantages too. It's just quite expensive. But like tungsten is even denser than lead. So just know that different shot materials play by different rules. It's not apples to apples with like a number 6 shot in tungsten versus a number 6 shot in lead versus a number 6 shot in steel. Shotgun, the most simple, most complicated of firearms categories. There's a lot into shotguns. There are a lot of really good, reliable shotguns. The older Remington 870, Wingmasters, Police Magnums, those are fantastic. The older, they don't make them anymore. The Winchester 1200, 1300s, when they were making pump shotguns, Winchester was making them in America and not Turkey. The older 1200s, 1300s, even older than that, like the 120, I think is what it was. And even older than that, the 12s are getting a little dated. You're probably not finding those with interchangeable chokes. But something like a Model 12 featherweight with an improved cylinder choke would not be a bad choice. But most of them, I believe, had a bead sight. But a good, reliable pump shotgun and a good, reliable semi-auto. And again, you got to spend quite a bit more, in my opinion, to get a good, reliable semi-auto than you do a good, reliable pump. If you think, I'm getting this copy of this expensive semi-auto shotgun for a third of the price. If that seems too good to be true, it probably is. So be careful on that. I would take a good, reliable pump over a quasi, maybe it's reliable on a warm, sunny day with the right lube, with the right ammo, semi-auto, budget semi-auto. Not for me. If it's just a range toy, if it's just a small game hunting tool, that's fine. If you get a malfunction, you just fix it and hunt another day. But if it's a life-saving tool, I would like a little bit more dependability than that. The big two I would consider would be 12 or 20 gauge. 12 gauge would be the standard unless I had a reason to go to 20. I would want good sights, not just a bead. I would want not a full choke, interchangeable chokes preferred, but some other more versatile choke okay. And a variety of ammo. And you got to get out and shoot and pattern your gun and sight in your gun. Hopefully you would never go out and hunt with a deer rifle without sighting it in. Hopefully you would never go out and trust your life to a shotgun that you hadn't patterned, sighted in, tested for reliability. You got to do that with the shotgun too. Not all shotgun ammo is created differently. Even all double-aught buck ammo, Federal Flight Control is vastly different than Rio double-aught buck, even though they both might say 9-pellet double-aught buck. You're talking way, way difference in performance usually. So do your due diligence. There's a lot that goes into shotguns, and I've done many other episodes on shotgun. You might want to dive down. And I just did a breakdown for patrons. I just recorded an episode for the Patreon page, like the brief differences on a Remington 870 and a Mossberg 500, like for the end user and mechanically, and the difference between a 1301 and a Benelli M series and inertia and gas and all that stuff. This was meant to be more of a flyover. Survival guns in 2024. There's a lot. It's a lot to go into, and it might really fascinate some people and might bore some people to tears when I talk about the differences in different buckshots, and is it plated, is it buffered? What kind of wad does it have, right? There's so much. Again, maybe the simplest, most complex weapon system we have is the shotgun. But hopefully this was beneficial and useful to you. If it was, please consider becoming a patron. There should be a Patreon link in the show notes. If you found this episode or any other valuable, first of all, share it with somebody else you think would find it valuable. And then if you found it valuable, hopefully you value my time a little bit and will consider supporting. A laborer is worthy of his wages. I took time out of my day to record this for you guys. If you want to give back, if you don't feel like you have to, feel like you get to, and if you want to, consider becoming a Patreon. There should be a Patreon link in the show notes. They get a lot of cool insider-only content. Enough of that. Tactical tip of the day. How about I recite for you guys Psalm 23? The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. You lead me in the paths of righteousness for your name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen.